welcome to SCAN's Community Connections. I'm Tom Hayes, Director of Customer and Community Relations for New Jersey Natural Gas, and your host for today's show. I'm very honored to have with us gubernatorial candidate Phil Murphy. And Phil, it's a pleasure to have you with us. You know, you're out there on the street doing what you need to do, but you took the time to come in and spend some time with us and talk to our seniors and our SCAN members, so we appreciate it.
I'm thrilled to be here, Tom. I'm a Monmouth County guy, so this is something I've been looking forward to for a while, so thanks for having me.
That's great, that's great. And again, I know your schedule's busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time.
My honor, my honor.
So we're going to go right into some of the questions that we had collected for you. So
Please.
We're going to go through these, and feel free to expand on them as you'd like to.
Great.
So first question is, many seniors on fixed incomes are suffering under property taxes. What will you do for them?
Yeah, so this is an issue that you hear up and down the state. You certainly hear it here in Monmouth and Ocean, but you hear it everywhere. And we used to be a lot fairer as a state as it relates to property taxes, as it relates to the whole bargain of living in this state. Right. We have among, if not the highest, property tax rates in the country. We used to do a much better job of cushioning that blow, particularly when folks retire, they lose their job, they go from the full-time economy to the gig economy. We used to be really good at sort of cushioning that blow. Right. And when you think about it, Tom, the house, that asset is typically the biggest asset in any American household, and certainly in New Jersey, right?
Right.
You buy it when you're into the sweet spot of your earnings years. Mm-hmm. The property tax is assessed on the house. It's completely blind to your earnings.
Right.
It's just a coincidence, frankly, that you do the math and you say, can I afford the mortgage? Can I afford the property tax? Can I still provide for my family?
Right.
And then all of a sudden this income goes down, in this case because you retire. And the property tax doesn't go down. Right. The property tax is completely blind to it. Mm-hmm. And so first thing is we used to do a much better job of cushioning that blow. We've ripped away a lot of the safety nets, a lot of those cushions, and I want to put those back in, right. Number one. Number two, if anybody who's watching takes out their property tax bill, look at how much of it is public education. It's 50% typically or more. I think the average is 50-something. Right. Not to be critical for the sake of being critical, but the Christie Guadagno administration has underfunded public education by over $9 billion. They've had other priorities. So that portion of your property tax bill is a bigger burden than it needs to be, particularly for a senior who more than likely doesn't have any kids in the school system, right?
Right.
So we're going to fully fund the school funding formula by going to sources other than property taxes. We're going to close loopholes on big corporations. We're going to get the very wealthiest among us to pay their fair share. We're going to tax hedge funds and get them out of the business of managing our pension assets. If we do those steps and we take a few others, we're going to be able to find the money to fully fund public education. That in and of itself will be a major source of relief for anyone who's got a property, any senior who's looking at that property tax bill and saying, man, I can't afford this. Gotcha. Last comment, actually two other comments, Tom. Sure. One is we think we can share services a lot more aggressively across townships. We're going to have someone who's going to actually look at that and only that and try to come up with incentives to do so. And lastly, the big one, we got to grow the economy again. Yeah. This economy hasn't really grown over the past 8 to 10 years. We've lagged any national average, we've lagged a regional average. If we can get the economy growing again, we'll raise the state revenues the right way, and then we'll have money, whether it's for property tax relief or funding our pension obligations or funding public education or infrastructure. So that's what I would say to seniors looking out there. Help is on the way. It won't be overnight, but we get it. And in particular, we have to get that cushion back to where it used to be, that bumper essentially that allows a senior to say, okay, I got it. This when I retire and my income's going down, I've got a little bit of a cushion here that'll help me out.
Right, right. Very good. Thank you. Many seniors have also seen their rebates frozen. What can they expect?
Well, that's a little bit of a similar. That's really in the similar
same neighborhood.
We got to get that program much more robust. It used to be, it's not nearly as robust as it used to be. Right. We went through a huge recession in our country, and that's probably the first excuse. We couldn't find the money. But government, it's a $35 billion budget. Okay, so It may have a lot of zeros and it may make your eyes gloss over, and it's a thick document,
Right.
but it screams priorities.
Right.
And the priorities for me and for us are the middle class, kids, getting them educated, seniors who have nowhere else to turn. And so we have to make sure it's not just a block of money that's going to whatever we want it to go to, that it says what we stand for.
Right.
And the seniors built this state, this great state as we know it. And so we stand on their shoulders.
Right.
And they've had our back as we've grown up.
Right.
And we need to have their back.
Right.
And Harry Truman had that great phrase, for everybody else who doesn't have a lobbyist, I'm their lobbyist. That's the sort of mentality we need again in this state. We need a chief executive, a governor, who's going to say, you know what, I'm going to look out for the folks who don't have anyone else looking out for them right now.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many stories I hear of the seniors who are selling their house not because they want to, but because they have to. Or leaving the state not because they want to, but because they have to.
Right.
Or holding on for dear life and perhaps driving themselves into poverty. We can't have that. That's not New Jersey. We're better than that. So we stand for, in total, but in particular for seniors, a stronger and fairer economy that works not just for some, but for everybody, and importantly for seniors.
Right. That's great. Thank you. So what's going on in Washington?
Oh, my Lord.
Has made a lot of people nervous about the future of their health care, both for themselves and their broader families. What are your thoughts on health care?
There's enormous volatility coming out of Washington, and I'm a proud Democrat, and I'm not even saying this as a partisan matter, but I certainly could if I chose to.
Right.
There's a lot of volatility, and what you don't need in this country, particularly with the big boss, is volatility. You'd like to see much more of a consistent, both sides of the aisle. This is not a partisan comment, so that volatility worries me.
Right.
And I'm particularly upset with the way they've assaulted health care in Congress and in the White House. I'm now upset that they may be coming after a tax reform that would particularly hurt New Jersey. So we need to get a governor who's going to stand up to that and say, listen, with all due respect, that's not going to work in New Jersey. So for now, at least as we sit here, but who knows how many times have we said this already, we think that the Affordable Care Act is going to stand. I've said that I think 3 or 4 times this year. You thought you've won, but it needs to be improved. It needs to get better. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. Barack Obama believes it's not perfect. So let's strengthen that. And whether that's exchanges, whether that's Medicaid, whether that's in rural parts of our country and some where there's no provider or there's one provider.
Right.
Let's make sure folks have choices. I believe health care is a right, not a privilege, from womb to tomb. Medicare, which will be as familiar a government program to your viewers as any program, I think is one of the most efficient government programs. People say, well, can you have Medicare for all? I'm open-minded to that. I think at the moment, the Affordable Care Act, we're halfway up the mountain, maybe more than halfway up the mountain toward that objective of universal and health care and health care as a right, not a privilege. So I think I'd like to start with the progress we've already made, but we got to make sure we have everybody's back. And at the moment, there's too much coming at us.
Yeah.
Too many. The winds coming up from Washington would force us into these awful discussions of choices. You're gonna. This person will have it, and this person won't. That's not who we are as American. I just remind everyone, Tom, public education is a right in this country from the age of 5 to the age of 18.
Correct.
Who died and went to heaven and said that we stopped there? Who said that health care is not a right? I served as the U.S. ambassador to Germany under President Obama. Universal health care is part of the fabric in Germany, brought to you by Bismarck, who was hardly a left-wing loony. I grew up with nothing. I grew up working poor. My dad didn't get out of high school. My mom did. We didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, but I grew up in the era of the Great Society, President Kennedy, President Johnson, where you knew the government would have your back.
Right.
We got to get back to that mentality.
Right. A lot of costs, the increase in costs in healthcare and all that, it's just
crazy,
been astronomical.
Listen, there's this, what they call the out-of-network loophole. That's one that's particularly galling. So you go, you go to see your physician who's in your coverage plan, and he or she recommends you to somebody, and you go in and you don't realize it. Nobody tells you that they're not in your plan, and you get a bill for $12,000.
Right, right.
And, you know, and it breaks your bank.
Yeah, for sure.
Who's got that lying around?
Yeah.
And so that's a loophole that we have. That's one thing we got to close. It costs individuals money. It costs the state actually a lot of money. That's a good example of something we got to shut that down and say enough of this.
Yeah.
Or this predatory pharmaceutical pricing that you saw some folks
That's insane.
all over, right?
That
Most
is
of
terrible.
the players in the industry are good citizens.
Right, right, right.
We may agree or disagree on aspects, but there are some players who are just ripping your eyes
Astonishing
out.
that somebody would go and do that. It's
That's
so
great.
obvious and so clear, and
And only to make money, right? So that was their
Yeah.
economic model to buy the company. They say, listen, we're charging you $10 for this. We think we can get away with 500 because it's the only drug in that space. Come on.
yeah, it's really terrible.
Unacceptable.
Right, I agree. Good. What are the differences between you and your opponent, who also happens to live in Monmouth
I
County?
know. How crazy is
Yeah,
that?
that is pretty crazy.
In
We're,
gen-
we're going to be winners here, though, no matter
Yeah.
what, right?
I think I could go out on a limb and say the next governor is going to be from Monmouth County.
Yeah. All right, we're safe there.
Exactly.
But what would you say are the
Our big
major
differences?
Yeah.
Well, listen, this is a state, I'll start with the economy, but you could go to a number of other areas. This is a state in crisis, not just through the eyes of seniors, just through almost any perspective, certainly through the eyes of the middle class. We don't grow enough. We're profoundly unfair. When it works for too few of us. We've been downgraded 11 straight times under this administration. We lead the nation in foreclosed homes. When most other states in America where household incomes are up, ours are down. For all the talk we have around property tax caps, property taxes in this administration are up 17%. Cost to send a kid to college in New Jersey up 20. NJ Transit fares, where the state has cut the funding by 90%, fares are up 36%. And you certainly can't say that service is up 36%. Employee-based health care premiums up over 40. So this is a state, the ultimate squeeze, particularly through the lens of the middle class, particularly through the lens of the seniors. So I think the starkest difference is what their track record is, they being the Lieutenant Governor and Governor Christie. She's been at his side every step of the way, almost 8 years. That's the track record she's going to have to answer for. It's profoundly unfair, and we've left an enormous amount of economic activity on the table. So we want to grow the economy again, reignite some of those engines we used to dominate. Innovation economy, I think you made the argument we were Silicon Valley before there was a Silicon Valley. The infrastructure economy. So we got to grow the economy again with good, high-paying jobs. We got to make it fair again. So that's property tax relief we've talked about. It's college education. It's equal pay for equal work. We have among the biggest gender gaps of any state in the country. It's a child-dependent caregiver tax credit. So we want to try to find the money for that
Right.
as
We're gonna
well.
Talk a little bit about that.
You betcha. A whole series of steps that I believe, can take and must take, and the Christie Guadagno administration have chosen not to take. I believe we can be a lot fairer than we are. So both grow and be fair and broaden the impact of that economy out. They've made choices.
Right.
This is not by accident that we're in this position. They've made choices, and we're living with the results. One of the choices they made, I mentioned earlier, underfunding public education by $9 billion. You can see that screams out at you in your property tax bill. So those are some of the differences we've got. There are more, but that's some of them.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk about caregivers and all that
Great.
sort of thing. But for now, we're just going to take a break, and we'll be back right after this commercial. Thank you very much.
Now's a great time to make your home more energy efficient, and the New Jersey Natural Gas Save Green project is here to help. Take advantage of rebates and incentives up to $15,000, designed to make your whole house more comfortable, improve performance, and save you money. Upgrade your older, inefficient heating equipment, central air conditioning system, and water heater with money-saving, high-efficiency equipment. But don't stop there. Your new equipment will have to work harder, wasting energy dollars if your home is not properly weatherized, by reducing air and duct leaks and installing proper insulation. Call the Save Green Project at 877-455-NJNG or visit SaveGreenProject.com, and we'll help you get on the road to maximum energy efficiency and savings, and explain how you may qualify for up to $15,000 in rebates and incentives. Call Save Green at 877-455-NJNG.
Well, welcome back to Community Connections here at SCAN. Again, my name is Tom Hayes. I'm your host, and appreciate your viewing this wonderful program. And we really are very fortunate to have with us Phil Murphy, a gubernatorial candidate. That's really been wonderful talking with you so far.
Thank
and
you,
we
Tom.
appreciate your being here for the second half of this wonderful
I
program.
love it. I'm honored to be here.
All right, so we'll just continue with the questions.
Great.
So this next question, all right, almost every New Jerseyan either was or will be a caregiver sometime in their lifespan. Caregiving puts an enormous strain on the physical, emotional, and financial well-being of these folks. How do you plan to help these families?
This is one that plays out in almost every family I know of. Sadly, my mother-in-law passed a few months ago, and
sorry.
my father-in-law was her caregiver, and he spent literally almost full time for going on 2 years taking care of her. He was fortunate. He's on the fortunate side of things because he had built a small business, and he was able to leave it to his son to run, and he had the time to be able to do that. But even then, it was a strain. And frankly, he's among the few lucky ones. Most folks don't have that wherewithal.
Right.
So there's an enormous emotional, in many cases physical burden, where people say, listen, I literally can't physically do the work I need to do as a caregiver. But there's also an economic burden. If you're still working and you've got to make that awful choice, can I stay home and take care, or do I go and provide? And you're in that awful spot. One of the things that we have said that we want to find the money for is a caregiver tax credit, which would allow folks to get the help they need so that the economic burden is a reasonable one, and such that they don't have that horrible dilemma. They can go to work and know that they've got coverage, which
Right.
doesn't come cheap, which is why the
Right.
tax credit is important to help get that, to make that happen. We talk about that tax credit more often than not in society for child and dependent care. So you think about that for kids
Right.
more than you think about it for mom and dad or husband and wife.
Right.
The fact of the matter is it's relevant for each end of the spectrum.
Absolutely.
So that's one of the things we want to pursue. We talk about that a lot. We hear about it a lot.
Right.
It's a tragedy that unfolds every day in lives all over this state, and we want to try to find a way to get that into a better place.
Right, and as we know, we're part of the sandwich generation where some families are being hit by both. They have
100%.
child care issues to deal with and parents
You
to
betcha.
deal with. And
You betcha. Particularly with folks having kids later in life, they've got both young kids and older parents at the same time.
Right, right.
Absolutely.
Well, it's good that you're
We're
really
on
got
it.
that-
This is one that's a priority for us.
That's great. And just so you know, SCAN has programming geared towards caregivers to help them get information and assistance where they can. There
Yeah.
are some programs out there, but not nearly enough in
I want
terms of the cost.
I should give SCAN a shout out because it's an iconic institution that's been around for 20 odd years. You all have been very good and generous in supporting it, but it does really good work. And again, we see it mostly through the lens of our lives in Monmouth County, but I want to give it a shout out. It's not just a really fun and cool
Right,
television
right,
program, which
right.
it is, but it's the whole operation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So how can we keep our next generation, for many of us, our grandchildren, here in New Jersey? As we talked before, we know the
Yeah.
costs are really high,
Yeah.
and it's difficult in many levels.
So this is one of these issues that's a big one, and it doesn't have one answer. So there's a series of things we need to do. We lead the nation, as a backdrop, we lead the nation per capita in exporting high school seniors to college. And if that weren't enough, we lead the nation in exporting college seniors to work from New Jersey elsewhere. And I'd like something other than our kids be our number one export. At one level, you wear it as a badge of honor, right? So the world wants our kids. I get that, and that's a good thing. But we have to make college more affordable and more accessible. We have to continue to develop the communities that millennials want to live in. You know, we're right now not far from Asbury Park, which is one of those communities that
And I know very
young
well.
folks are dying to get into. And we have to create the jobs in the new 21st century economy that millennials will want to go to. And public policy can backstop all of those. And again, you asked about my differences with the lieutenant governor. public policy in the Christie Guadagno administration has in fact not only not bolstered those three objectives, it's actually taken money from it or ignored them. So we've taken money from higher education, not put it into it. We've been slow to have government support for the development of communities and infrastructure. Another thing millennials like to do these days, they don't like to drive a car. They want to walk or take light rail or some other mass transit.
Which is great.
Which is great, but we've taken money from that. And lastly, we got to create the jobs that these young folks see as part of their future. I'll give you one example where public policy has let us down. We have 15 technology incubators in New Jersey. New York State has 179. And that's not by accident. So we've kind of turned our back on science and technology and job creation and entrepreneurial startups. New York has embraced it with public policy, and you see the difference. So it's not a one easy sentence answer, but I think if we accomplish what I've just said, and we can put money in higher ed, we can continue to invest in communities and infrastructure, and we can backstop the creation of 21st century innovation economy jobs. You do all those, you keep the kids home.
Right, that's great. Because goodness knows there are so many hurdles to tackle.
Oh, no question.
And like you said, so many kids are going out of state to go to college.
Absolutely.
And again, that's where they get picked up. They get internships, wherever it might be.
You go to Boston, you go to Washington or wherever, they don't come back.
Yeah.
And
it's
the
tricky.
talent's high.
It's tough on the families because now your families scatter all over the place as opposed to the old days where pretty much so many people stayed in sort of their neighborhoods and all that, right?
No question. We have one plan that we're working on just to add to this that we like a lot because it kills several birds with one stone. Number one, here's what the idea is. Keep the kid in New Jersey to go to college. Major in a field that we're emphasizing. So I mentioned the innovation economy. So major in technology or science or physics. Kid graduates from college, have that young person work in New Jersey in that field for 5 years. And then in years 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, there's a fund that forgives X thousands of dollars per year off that young person's outstanding student loan balance. You've kept the young person in New Jersey. You've got them into a field, both in study and in work that you're emphasizing, and you've taken a huge burden of their college loan off the table. That's something like that we like a lot.
That's great. And if they're here for that long, chances are they're going to stay for the long run, and you're certainly going to cut down on the amount of kids that leave this
Listen,
state.
if we get somebody here until they're 32 or 3, which is what you get them, and then I think we got a good shot of keeping them.
And that's great for our seniors too that want to be near their kids.
They want to be, absolutely.
Yep, and you keep them
that's
all
a
here.
win-win-win.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So, how many, we know many older New Jerseyans rely on special services and mass transportation to get through their day. How can we improve these systems, not only in our area, but throughout the state, and make sure these vital linkages for seniors aren't cut off?
Yeah. So special services, particularly in transportation, is something that, again, we used to be a lot better at than we are now. A lot of that's federal money. And I would be very critical of the governor, lieutenant governor's engagement in getting as many federal dollars back into New Jersey as we deserve. We punch well under our weight. And as far as I could tell, that's not because of our congressional delegation. We've got a pretty strong, if not very strong, delegation. By the way, I would say, in fairness, in many cases on both sides of the aisle. I know the Democrats a lot better, and several of them are heroes of mine. So I know we got a very strong delegation. What I also know, because I've asked around this over the past number of years, we have very little coordination between the executive branch and that delegation. And so we typically send a lot more money to Washington than that which we get back.
Right, I hear that all the time.
Right, and so whether it's Sandy Aid, whether it's education, whether it's infrastructure, and in this case, special services for seniors. Now, there's state money as well, so you can't ignore the fact the state's got an obligation, but the feds have money available for seniors to provide for that transportation, and we're not getting our fair share. It's another reason why we need a strong voice in Washington and a coordinated effort between the executive branch and the congressional delegation. We don't have that now. If we get there, we will. infrastructure and mass transit you mentioned. You'd think if you're the fourth smallest state in the nation geographically, which we are, that you are the densest state in the nation, which we are. If you sat next to the largest market in the world, in New York, which we do, and one of the largest in the country, in Philadelphia, you'd think if you messed everything else up, the one thing you'd get right would be commuter rail.
Yeah, right.
And that's not been the case.
No.
So, and we maybe shouldn't be surprised. You cut NJ Transit's state support by 90%, fares are up 36%. You got a bunch of folks in there who don't have expertise or experience in commuter rail. You probably get what we should expect. So we need a renaissance in our transportation infrastructure.
Agreed.
Roads, bridges, rails, tunnels, the green economy, which sits nicely in both. There's no reason why we can't lead the nation again, which we used to do. NJ Transit used to be viewed as the best commuter rail operation in the country. There's no reason we can't reclaim that space.
Right. I know, being involved with other organizations, that we were trying to do like the MOM rail line from Monmouth Ocean, Middlesex, and to try to get anything through or passed or approved is like
It's hard.
It's a nightmare.
And you need the feds to help backstop you.
We need those lines put in while we can, because those lines, those old rail lines that are sort of still available at this moment, who knows, 10 years from now, they
may not be.
And we won't be able to pull them back.
Absolutely, and you hear this not just here, you hear it in Hudson and Bergen, you hear it down south in Gloucester and Camden. There's enormous opportunity. And by the way, the other thing is this, Tom, study after study will show you put $1 into extension of a light rail line, you get $7 back in the real economy. I mean, it's absolutely axiomatic you'll get economic development, and we desperately need that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we know in our area that transportation is an issue, Monmouth County in particular.
No question.
It's hard to get around this county unless you have your own car. And not only seniors may not have their car anymore because they may not be physically able to drive or vision or some other issue. Now they're stranded. And what's that doing to their quality of life? They can't do anything.
And we've talked a lot about rail. We shouldn't ignore buses, which are a vital element of the transportation reality in a Monmouth and Ocean County.
Right.
We got to make sure that that service is as good as it can be.
Absolutely.
And as accessible as it can be. And we realistically can do a lot better there.
Right. All right, so we got about a minute left.
Yes, sir.
So just again,
buzz around.
I just know. So you're married. You have Tammy's your wife.
Yes.
You have 4 children. Is
We
that
do.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
And can give me a little bit like what are
So
their ages?
So we live in Middletown.
Okay.
I'm a Boston guy. Tammy's a Virginia gal. We fell in love with Monmouth County.
Beautiful.
And we chose Monmouth County to raise our 4 kids. So that's high on the list of the best decisions we ever made. We're in Middletown. We got Josh, who's 20, who's a sophomore at Tufts in Boston. He took the semester off in summer to work in our campaign, which is a real thrill. Our daughter Emma just graduated from high school. She has taken a gap year, and she is right now herself working on the campaign, and then she's going to do a few other things in that year. She's got it well planned out.
Yeah, 10 more seconds.
Charlie's a junior in high school.
Nice.
Loving life, and Sam is a freshman in high school, bigger than life and loving life.
Excellent. Got a great family, so that's
Thank
great.
you, Tom.
So we really appreciate your time again, and we certainly appreciate our viewers, and we thank you for really spending time with us here at Community Connections with SCAN. Thank you very much.